phone is ringing, papers are moving, coffee is brewing, things going on everywhere. Yet at the end of the week, you ask what got accomplished, and the answer is not much. Motion isn't progress. Let that land. Just because the wheels are spinning doesn't mean the car is moving forward. It's easy to fall into that trap, mistaking movement for achievement. But the truth is, without a plan, energy just scatters. Effort evaporates into thin air. And all that busyness can feel like you're getting somewhere, but really, you're just wearing yourself out. Now, why does that happen? Why do people find themselves so active, but with so little to show for it? It's not for lack of trying. Most people are working hard. They get up early, they stay up late. But hard work alone doesn't guarantee progress. Direction does. The question isn't, are you moving? The question is, are you moving towards something? It's the difference between a rocking chair and a train. Both are in motion, but only one's going somewhere. I've met so many folks who, by the time they reach the end of the year, feel exhausted. But when they look back, it's a blur. What did they actually achieve? Without a plan, the answer is often not enough. I remember a time in my own life when I was the busiest man in town. At least, that's what I told myself. I had my nose to the grindstone, always hustling, always saying yes. Then one evening, I sat down and realized I'd spent a whole year running around in circles. There were no real results, just a lot of motion. That's when it hit me. Activity is not the same as accomplishment. If you don't know where you're going, how can you expect to get there? Think about it. If you set out on a journey with no map, no destination, you'll end up wherever the road takes you. Maybe you'll get lucky. Most of the time, you'll just get lost. People spend years, decades even, caught in this illusion. They believe as long as they're busy, they must be making progress. But busyness is not a badge of honor. Progress is. And here's the real danger. When you mistake activity for progress, you can wake up 5, 10 years down the line and wonder where all the time went. The calendar pages turned, but did your life change? Or did you just keep yourself occupied, hoping things would work out? So ask yourself today, what am I really working toward? What's the plan behind my effort? Because if there's no plan, all the energy in the world won't get you where you want to go. Without a target, you can't hit the mark. Without a plan, you can't move with purpose. That's the illusion of activity. It feels good in the moment, but it won't carry you to your dreams. And until you face that, nothing changes. Now I want to start with a basic fundamental of success, blueprint thinking. You see, every building you walk into started with a plan. Before the first brick was laid, someone sat down and imagined what it could become. They drew lines, calculated dimensions, pictured where the doors and windows should be. That's blueprint thinking. Success is built twice, first in the mind, then in reality. I learned early on that clarity is a powerful force. When you know what you want, confusion disappears. But how many people live their lives with only a vague idea of what they're after? They have wishes, they have hopes, but there's no real plan. So what happens? Life gets in the way. Distractions multiply. The urgent crowds out the important. A clear plan is the mental construction that guides disciplined action. Without it, you end up chasing every little thing that comes your way. But with it, every step, every decision, every ounce of effort is measured against a vision you've already seen in your mind. That's how you move with purpose instead of just moving. I remember meeting a young man who was frustrated. He told me he'd been working hard for years, but nothing seemed to change. I asked him, "What's your plan?" He shrugged. He hadn't thought much about it. No wonder progress felt elusive. He was building his life one random brick at a time. No design, no direction. So I encouraged him to start small. Take out a piece of paper and write down exactly what he wanted to accomplish this year. Suddenly, there was focus. There was clarity. And that clarity replaced his confusion. See, the mind loves order. Give it a clear blueprint, and it will start to organize your actions. You wake up in the morning knowing what needs to be done. Decisions become easier. Distractions lose their appeal. You start to filter out what doesn't fit the plan. It's like tuning a radio. When the signal is clear, the static disappears. But don't make the mistake of thinking you need a perfect plan before you begin. What matters is that you have a plan, something to anchor your effort, to channel your creativity, to discipline your action. Even the simplest blueprint is better than none at all. It gives you something to work from, something to improve. Every business that thrives, every life that flourishes, starts with someone taking the time to design what could be. They sit down and say, here's what I want, and here's how I'm going to get it. It might be rough at first, but over time, that plan takes shape. It grows with you. And as your vision sharpens, your progress accelerates. So if you're feeling scattered, if you're busy but not getting anywhere, ask yourself, what's my blueprint? Because once you see it clearly in your mind, you can build it in your life. Now, here's what happens when there's no plan. The default for most people is to drift. Not a sudden crash, not a dramatic fall, just a slow, steady drift. It's subtle, it's quiet, and it's dangerous. Picture a boat out on the water. No anchor, no sail, no motor, just floating wherever the current goes. That's what happens to your life when you don't set a direction. The current of circumstances, the winds of other people's opinions, the tides of distraction, they all push you wherever they want. Before you know it, you've drifted far from where you meant to be. Here's the truth. Most people don't lose to failure. They lose to indecision. It's not one big mistake that costs you the most. It's all those little moments where you choose to do nothing, where you say, I'll figure it out later, or I'll just wait and see. The longer you wander, the further you fall behind. Drifting never feels urgent. That's the tricky part. It doesn't scream for your attention. It just happens day by day, week by week. You look up, and suddenly you're far from shore. You ask yourself, how did I get here? The answer, by not deciding, by not planning, by letting life push you around instead of steering your own course. When you drift, you give up control. You let the world decide for you. Maybe you end up somewhere pleasant, but more often you find yourself in places you never intended. And then comes the regret, the realization that you could have done more, been more, if only you'd taken the wheel. Don't let indecision become your master. The price of drifting is steep. It costs you time, it costs you progress, and most of all, it costs you the sense of pride that comes from knowing you're building your own future. Every day you let pass without a plan is a day you let the current decide your direction. And the longer you wait, the harder it is to get back on course. Momentum works both ways. Drift long enough, and it starts to feel normal. But that's not what you want, is it? So the challenge is simple. Stop drifting. Decide where you want to go. Make a plan, even if it's not perfect. Because the price of indecision is far greater than the risk of a wrong turn. At least if you're moving, you can adjust. If you're drifting, you're just at the mercy of the waves. If you want to stop drifting, you need anchors. That's where goals come in. Goals are the anchors of your life, the steady points that keep you from being swept away by every passing current. Let me tell you, a goal written down is no longer a wish. It becomes a directive, a command to yourself. When you take the time to write out your goals, you transform someday into a scheduled event. That's the power of putting pen to paper. A dream in your mind is good, but a goal on paper is a promise you make to yourself. Think about it. Goals define the target, and plans define the path. It's not enough to want something. You have to define it so clearly that you can see it, touch it, measure it. When you do, it becomes real. That's when your mind gets to work, figuring out how to get there. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, writing out the things I wanted in life. Some seemed impossible at the time, but the act of writing them down made them feel a little more within reach. I wasn't just daydreaming anymore. I was making an appointment with my future. When you anchor yourself with goals, you start to make better choices. Suddenly you have a reason to say no to distractions. You have a reason to get up a little earlier, to stay up a little later. The goal becomes the filter for your actions. But don't stop at just writing them down. Break them into steps. Planning is what takes your goal from a someday to a by this date. It puts your dream on the calendar and gives you a reason to act today instead of tomorrow. You want a better life? Anchor it with goals and then plan your way there. Because without anchors, even the best intentions will drift. But with them, you can weather any storm. So we have to plan in real time. Now, what does that mean? You see, life isn't static. The world changes, markets shift, opportunities appear, and sometimes they disappear. That's why your plan should never be written in stone. It's not a monument, it's a map, and maps can be updated. I used to think, once I set my goals and made a plan, all I had to do was follow it to the letter. But then I learned that flexibility is just as important as discipline. Imagine trying to steer a car down a winding road with your hands locked in one position. You wouldn't get far. Steering requires constant adjustment, and so does planning. Here's what I recommend. Review your plan every week. Not every year, not every 6 months, every week. Take a look at where you are and where you want to be. What's working? What's not? What changed since last week? That little habit of review is like pulling out your map, checking your compass, and making sure you're still on course. Sometimes you'll realize the goalposts have moved. Maybe the opportunity you were counting on isn't there anymore. Maybe a better one has come along. That's fine. Adjust your plan. Refine your approach. What matters is not that you stick to the original script, but that you keep moving in the direction you want to go. I've seen people get discouraged when things don't go exactly as planned. Don't let that stop you. Life will throw you curveballs. The key is to respond, not react. Make your plan, take action, and then stay flexible. Be willing to pivot when the road changes. And here's another benefit. When you make regular adjustments, you avoid the big disasters. Small corrections made early keep you from getting way off track later. It's much easier to steer a little each week than to wait until you're miles off course and have to make a giant, painful change. So, keep your plan alive. Make it a living document, not a dusty relic. Review, refine, and adjust as often as you need to. That's how you keep momentum, by making sure you're always moving, never just coasting. Okay, you've got goals, you've made a plan, but there's one step most people miss: the discipline of scheduling. A plan without a calendar is just a wish. You know, I used to think as long as I knew what I wanted, I could just fit it in whenever I had the time. But whenever is a dangerous word. It never comes. Days slip by, opportunities vanish, and pretty soon, you're back to wondering why nothing's moving forward. If something matters, it belongs on your schedule. Time block your priorities. Protect those appointments with yourself as if they were meetings with your future, because that's exactly what they are. Treat them with respect. Don't let someone else's emergency wipe out your progress. Don't let the urgent crowd out the important. If you want to read more, schedule it. If you want to get healthier, block the time to exercise. If you want to build a business, put the critical steps on the calendar. Treat those times as sacred. Show up for yourself, just like you would show up for someone you respect. I learned that if you don't schedule your time, someone else will. The world is full of demands, distractions, and invitations. Every yes to something unplanned is a potential no to something essential. That's why the calendar isn't just a tool, it's a shield. It protects your progress from the chaos of the world. And don't just make appointments, keep them. That's where discipline comes in. Keep the promises you make to yourself. If you set aside an hour for your goals, show up. No excuses, no exceptions. That's how progress becomes inevitable, one block of time at a time. So remember, a plan without a calendar is a wish. Put it on paper. Put it in ink. Guard those times, and you'll be amazed how quickly momentum starts to build. Now, here's what will change everything for you if you embrace it: accountability. If you want to turn a plan into progress, you need feedback. You need a way to track, to measure, to adjust. I found that what gets measured gets managed. If you keep your goals invisible, progress is always vague. But when you track it visibly, honestly, it becomes real. Put your results where you can see them. Track your steps, your habits, your milestones. It's like putting progress under a magnifying glass. And it's not just about numbers. Sometimes the best feedback comes from other people, mentors, coaches, or just honest friends. People who will tell you the truth, even when it stings. They'll spot the blind spots you can't see, the small mistakes, before they become big problems. Early in my journey, I used to keep everything to myself. I thought, I'll just work on it quietly. But the real breakthrough came when I started sharing my goals, reporting my progress, and seeking honest feedback. Suddenly, I was no longer just accountable to myself. I was accountable to others. That changed everything. Here's the key. Create a feedback loop, and those victories fuel your drive to keep going. It's like investing a little bit every day. Each deposit seems small, almost insignificant. But given enough time, those small investments add up. They grow, they compound, and before you know it, you're looking at something substantial, a life, a business, a legacy built on steady progress. I've seen it in my own life. The more often I checked in on my plans, the more they seemed to accelerate. What used to take a month took a week. What used to take a week took a day. That's the power of compounding. Small disciplines, repeated with consistency. So if you want your progress to multiply, build the habit of daily review. Plan, do, check, adjust, again and again. Because it's not the occasional big effort that changes your life. It's the steady rhythm of consistent planning. I'm telling you, progress is never accidental. Every achievement, every breakthrough, every success story traces back to a structured plan, executed with discipline. A designed life doesn't happen by chance. It's built brick by brick, choice by choice. You want momentum? Build the map first. Set the direction. Write it down. Turn your dream into a goal, your goal into a plan, and your plan into a schedule. Then show up day after day and do the work. When you look at anyone who's built something remarkable, whether it's a business, a family, a community, it all starts the same way. Someone took the time to sit down and design what they wanted. They mapped out the route, prepared for the challenges, and stayed flexible enough to adjust along the way. It's not always easy. There will be detours, There will be setbacks. There will be days when you feel like you're making no progress at all. But as long as you have a plan and the discipline to follow it, you'll always know where you're headed, and that makes all the difference. Remember, no plan means no progress. If you want to change your life, don't leave it up to chance. Become the architect of your own future. Draw the blueprint. Lay the foundation. Build the life you want, step by step, day by day. You have everything you need to begin. The tools, the time, the opportunity, they're all within reach, but only if you put them to use. Start with a plan, commit to it, adjust as needed, and watch how quickly your progress multiplies. Because in the end, it's simple. No plan, no progress.